David Dang. I work for a company called Zenergy Technology. It's based out of North Carolina. All right? Yeah, fun stuff. East Coast, West Coast, right? I already kind of told you guys a little bit about myself. And the main reason that I want to present at Jenkins conference is there's a couple of reasons. But one of the main reasons is when you think about continuous integration using Jenkins for build deployments and all that stuff, you don't think about testing, right? Now, let me change that, time out, right? You do think about testing from a unit perspective, right? So you can, if you are working with Java, you write some JUnit tests, and then you run it, right, as part of your deployment, right? What I want to do is present this because I want to kind of change that mindset to think about testing from a continuous integration part of it, which is, when you go and do a deployment, you definitely want to run your unit tests. This is very important, right? But at the same time, right, after your post-build, you should think about running it from a post-build activities also, right? Have you guys heard of the term BVT? Build verification testing? Have you heard of that term? That's basically, and some company call it sanity checking, some company call it smoke testing. But what that is basically making sure that even though your code passes unit testing, the core functionality of your application still works, right? Because unit testing that small unit of code, and that might not expose problems that are critical to your application, right? So let's say that, if you are testing Amazon, what would one of your BVT tests would be? What do you think? Sign in, good. More important than sign in. Buy something, check out, right? I mean, think about it. People can search all day long, right? Amazon's making no money from that. When do they make money? When they click on submit, okay? So what we want to do is we want to advocate, right, using a continuous integration tools like Jenkins, okay, to do part of that, okay, that build verification testing or smoke testing or sanity checking, okay, every time there's a code deployment, okay, anytime there's a build, okay, we want to be able to do some of this. Now, the focus on this is actually mobile world. And how many people are actually working on mobile projects? Yay, okay. I mean, 5-6 years ago, when I go to a conference and I ask how many people have smartphone, about half the participants raise their hand, right? Now, when I ask participants, how many people have smartphone? Most, if not all participants. Now, there's always one holdout. Anybody still have a flip phone? There's got to be one holdout on here. No? This must be Silicon Valley. Oh, you have a flip phone still? Okay. Again, so mobile world have really changed, right? I mean, and again, development are really investing, companies are investing in mobile, right? And from a mobile perspective, there's actually, just to let you know, that's off topic to this, from a mobile and mobile testing, we actually categorize 3 things. We categorize, are you having a mobile website? Okay. Do you have a native app or do you have a hybrid app? Very different on testing those 3. Okay. So you got to know what you're testing. But again, the main reason that I actually want to present this because I wanted to show you how we can integrate testing, functional testing, okay, or build verification testing into your continuous integration using Jenkins. Does that make sense? All right? And again, since we have a pretty small crowd, stop me anytime if we get off topic. I know we only have 45 minutes. I can talk about this thing for days. So if you have some questions, we can address this. We can always address it after this. All right? All right. So that's kind of the introduction. I'm going to talk to you about this case study, the background of this. And again, it's one of the clients I work with, right? How did we select the tools that we need, all right? And also the implementation planning, the outcome. And then I'm actually going to do a quick demo for you guys of just basically kicking off a job in Jenkins. And you can see how it runs, right, in mobile, all right? So as more and more companies go into continuous integration, more and more companies are also doing digital channel. You know what digital channel is? Yes? No? Digital channel is a new word. It's another trend word, another word company use that basically comprises of basically anything web-based and anything mobile-based, and anything from a smart TV base. You know how a lot of TV now, you can surf the web and all that fun stuff? All right? So digital channel is basically all three of those things. Okay? Oh, wait, I forgot one thing. How many people have iWatch? No? Really? All right. Really? Android? The watch? No? Wow. This is first for me. All right? But all those are what we consider wearable, and they all have to be tested too. All right? So let's look at the background of this company that we implement. We implement mobile automation with Jenkins. All right? It's an insurance company. It has web, mobile, and wearable. It uses agile development methodology. You guys all know about agiles, right? I mean, you know, you guys are Silicon Valley. All right? Not as mature as agile as they hope. All right? So a lot of companies does agile. What I found is they do what we call scrumafall. Have you ever heard of that term? Which is miniature waterfall. Okay? Okay? Or fragile, right? Very fragile. Okay? Again, I actually speak at a couple of agile conferences too, and it's always fun to hear people how their company implement agile. And let me tell you, the spectrum is really huge, right? Development want to use Jenkins for CI, so they want to be able to, again, build code, deploy code, all right, through Jenkins. They want to use open toolset for test automation. How many people know what is Selenium WebDriver here? Yay! Ooh, wow, you guys. Maybe we should talk about Selenium WebDriver. I have another presentation on that too. That's great, okay? So they want to use open tools, all right? They have some automated unit testing pairing with Jenkins already, which is good. Again, we always encourage that companies does unit testing, right? Because again, the earlier you can find it, the better it is, all right? Now, what they need and want, and here's the fun part, all right? Ready for this? They want a single automated script to test across both mobile and desktop website. All right? Think about that, okay? One script that I can run in Firefox, IE, Safari, right? iOS Safari, and Android Chrome. All right? Now, usually company, what they do, they go out there and create 2 sets of scripts, sometimes 3 sets of script, right? One script to do desktop, one to do iOS, and one to do Android, all right? But this company, they want one script, all right? They want a subset of their automation script, their smoke test, to run with continuous integration, again, using Jenkins. And that's why we're here, right? We want to know more how to do that. They want timely reporting for go and no-go decision, all right? Basically, if a build comes out, all right, they run the JUnit test, okay? After that JUnit test, they're going to do the build, and then the post-build activity, they want to run the automation smoke tests. If that passes, then they say that build is good, okay? And then, again, if it's a hot fix, they actually go straight to production, yay, all right? If it's not a hot fix, they go through QA, all right? But if any one of those steps fail, that build is considered no good, okay? It go back to development. Make sense? All right? They want low maintenance of automated script. And again, if you guys use Selenium WebDriver and all that stuff, you know that the things that kill automation is not developing it. It's maintaining it, right? Making sure those scripts run over and over again, all right? And then they also want a suite that can handle advanced dynamic web content, all right? It's funny because, you know, I've been to places and they're like, we only automate things that are static, all right? And my question is, if it's static, why are you automating it? Okay? Because again, the whole thing about static is it shouldn't change very often, right? Then it should always work, right? So it needs to be a combination of static and dynamic. It can't not just be static, all right? So what did we do? We came up with a way to accomplish this. We know we had to use Eclipse with Java. We want to use TestNG. How many people have used TestNG here? Yay! Awesome. Love TestNG. Much better than JUnit for automation, for Selenium automation, right? Not for unit testing, okay? Maven, you guys all know about Maven, right? All right. We also use Perfecto Mobile, okay? They offer a cloud solution, and I will go into a little bit more detail on why we select Perfecto versus, how many people work with Appium here? Yay, awesome, okay? Very, I love Appium too, but there's some challenges with Appium, all right? Jenkins, okay, which is here, all right? We have ReportNG for reporting. We have Selenium WebDriver, and we put everything in SVN, okay? So you guys know all these tools here, right? Pretty straightforward here, the list of tools, all right? So now what we're going to do is, once we select those tools, we have to figure out who does what, right? So we got to figure out the QA role and responsibility. Remember, it's no use for you to implement automation if you don't have people to support it from a long-term perspective, okay? A lot of companies are really good at building automation, but they are terrible at maintaining automation, right? So we got to apply that. We also apply the plan for the type of testing, right? So we talk about Amazon, right? So we talk about, the BVT for Amazon, right? It's checkout, login, stuff like that, right? But beyond that, how many people actually test and make sure that, well, when I create an order, it actually gets saved to the database? Okay? Because again, if you say submit, and it gives you, say, confirmation this, but it never got to save to the database, guess what? That order doesn't exist. Make sense? So you got to understand the different type of testing. You got to understand, we have to understand the types of environment. They actually want to run in more than just QA environment. They actually want to run in what they call development integration environment and then QA environment. So we had to make sure that from a Jenkins perspective, every time there's a deployment or a code build, right, for development integration and for QA, we will run our BVT or our smoke test. Make sense? All right. Test data strategy, right? What data to use? Again, automation is going to consume a lot of data, right? So as simple as Amazon testing, okay? If I to test Amazon and I keep buying the same product over and over again in my test environment or in my QA environment, eventually it's going to be out of product. Make sense? So I got to make sure, how do I, right, ensure that my script can run over and over again without exhausting that information. And then, of course, level of testing, UI, backend, application technologies, defect tracking, QA resource skill set. That's one that a lot of companies doesn't think about. Who is actually going to be doing the automation, maintaining the automation, and expanding the automation. So here's what we designed it, all right? And again, this seems a little bit simple, but there's a lot of a lot of moving parts to this. So from an execution perspective, we want to manage through Jenkins. So in Jenkins, we actually have 3 levels of execution, right? We have what we call trigger. Every time development, right, check-in code does a build, it automatically triggers the post-build activities after the pre-build, the build, and the post-build. That's one way. It's what we call trigger execution. Another is what we call schedule execution. Okay? Schedule execution is, let's say that development moved code to QA. Okay? Now in QA, I'm testing, but I want to run my regression tests, right? My regression automation. I'm going to schedule it in Jenkins, right? So I typically schedule my job to run daily, right? At usual when everybody leaves, basically is about 6, 7 o'clock at night, all right? And then what we call on demand, where you say build now, all right? So we want the ability to do that in Jenkins for all 3, all right? Trigger, schedule, right? And on demand. All right? We have a configuration file that basically tells us, okay, if we're running on desktop browser and mobile browser or both, okay? So that will kind of trigger how many things we want to run. The script is from TestNG, and for Selenium, we're using a page object model, okay? For those who use Selenium, how many people use page object model here? Yay! All right, you guys have other stuff, that's good, all right? But page object model is really simple, right? You break down your application into pages. Within the page class, you have method that you do certain things with that page. All right? We use ReportNG for reporting. And then from a test environment standpoint, we can run it on mobile device. If we're running on mobile device, we'll be running it through Perfecto Mobile. Okay? And again, I will talk about a little bit more later on why we use Perfecto. And then if we run it on desktop, we actually use Selenium Grid. How many people use Selenium Grid? Yay, all right? And we have multiple VM we set up with different browser combination that we can run from. Make sense? Okay. All right. And from an ongoing execution standpoint, we want Jenkins to be the focus point in actually kicking off the suite, all right? And again, we have multiple VM, and some VM, okay, will trigger off Firefox, and some VM will trigger off the other stuff, all right? So let's talk a little bit about Selenium WebDriver. And again, for most of you guys already work with Selenium, again, Selenium WebDriver, the definition is Selenium WebDriver test browser, right? I mean, if you go to selenium.org, that's the definition of Selenium. All right, a test browser, all right? It lets you interact with browser object, work with both desktop and mobile browsers, okay? And navigate, validate, all that fun stuff, okay? So you have all the assertion point and all that fun stuff, right? And to be honest with you, when I first started doing test automation, it was all the commercial tools, right? Remember way back, actually most of you guys are probably too young for this, but way back there's a company in Sunnyvale, California called Mercury Interactive? No? They actually created the tools back then was called Windrunner, okay? Ooh, HP bought them over, okay? And now you have QTP and UFT. I mean, if you're in the automation arena, you know that. A lot of companies are moving away from that. They are moving into open source. And Selenium is definitely. 3-4 years ago, there was an automation tool that's really cool called Ruby Water. Have you ever heard of that? It's really cool tools. And I actually spent a good 6 months learning it, thinking it's going to take off. Guess what? It never took off. That's the problem with open source, all right? And then also about 4 years ago, there was another tools called Fitness. Have you heard of that? Okay. Again, we thought it's going to take off because of Agile. Never got off the ground. All right. Right now, it's pretty much Selenium WebDriver. All right. Jenkins, continuous integration tools. All right. Manage build process for automation run, kick off the job. Okay. On demand. All right. Maintain build history. You guys all know this. I'm sure, you know, if you guys show up at this conference, I'm sure you know what Jenkins is. All right. And then TestNG. TestNG is really cool. I really like TestNG. What TestNG does is it helps you manage your tests. Okay? So TestNG have what we call annotations. So you can say before test do this, right? You can say at test do this. You can say after test do this. So you have what we call setup, test, and teardown. Okay? And TestNG does that all for you, right? And it's really cool. Now, here's the big difference between JUnit and TestNG. You guys know what the difference is? Because JUnit also have annotation, right? There's a big difference. Huh? Report, yeah, a little bit better, but we usually still use report-ng for that, right? The biggest difference is TestNG allow you to run multi-threaded, okay? Which is awesome from an automation standpoint, okay? Because I can have the same tests, right, running against Firefox, IE, you see what I'm saying? All at the same time, right, versus single-threaded, okay? So TestNG is really cool at doing that, all right? And then we use page object model, okay? And page object model, again, is nothing more than managing how you group your automation, okay? And for reusability standpoint, right? So somebody pointed out login, remember that? Right? Now, from a unit level testing, I will test, whatever the login class, and that's it, right? But if I'm doing functional or smoke tests or integration tests, pretty much every time I have to log into something first, right? I don't want to repeat that same code over and over again, right? Because think about it. If I have one test, it's okay. If I have 20 tests, it's okay. But if I have 200 tests and all of them have login and login changes, guess what? I got to go upgrade or update 200 of my script. Not fun, just to let you know. So we always try to do something that encourages reusability. And page object model is one of the methodologies you can use for reusability standpoint. Make sense? All right. Multiple versions of page object are required due to variation between page layout, okay? And also difference practice between mobile and website. So what I mean by that is this, okay? So even though the objective was to have one script to run on desktop and mobile, right? So when you open a website on mobile, is it always the same as desktop? No, right? okay? Because mobile screen is a lot smaller, right? And what a lot of company does is they use what we call responsive web design. Have you ever heard of that term? Okay, you know what it is? Okay, responsive web design is nothing more than a methodology that I use to make sure that they optimize the display of the website across multiple screen resolution. Make sense? So if I'm testing on an iPad mini versus my desktop, right, it's going to optimize that. So there are slight differences between the web page you see on a desktop versus a mobile. All right? We have to account for that. All right? And that's why we need multiple version of page object. We also use Sprint framework. How many people have used Sprint framework here before? Yay! You guys are awesome. All right? You guys are in the right room. We're too geeky. All right? So Sprint framework lets you dynamically switch between pages. Okay? So if I say run on mobile, it knows to load, okay, the mobile page object. Does that make sense? If I'm running it on desktop, it knows to load desktop. Okay, it's really cool. It's, there's a lot of, so just off topic here, right? How many people have, did you know that Google put together a Google test automation conference? Yes? All right. It's a really cool conference. It's free. You have to get yourself there. But you have to write like a little essay of why you want to attend and what value added for the conference. So one year I actually did that, right? And it was in New York City. So I went there. It's a single track conference for 2 days, all right? They give out, eating and everything is free at Google. Awesome, all right? Well, you guys probably know more about that, right? But in North Carolina, nothing is free, just to let you know, when you work for a company, right? So you have to pay for coffee, right? So anyway, I was there, right? And it was a single track, right? And there was this guy that came up to the podium and said, I created a new framework for test automation, and it's called Frankenstein. And literally, he got up to the podium and started coding. So you can see this is how the framework's set up. And if you need a new method, here's how you create it. And literally, for an hour and a half, he coded up a bunch of stuff to get around like crazy problems. All right? And that's when I realized there's two groups in IT. You have what we call geek, right? Which is me. And then you have the super geek, all right? And there are super geeks out there that are literally, all right? So why the story is because, again, somebody see a need for Sprint, and someone went out there and coded up the Sprint framework, all right? Really cool stuff. ReportNG is an extension of TestNG, and it helps you do a lot of reporting, right? It has color-coded, easy to understand, okay, shareable, all that fun stuff. It's actually a really cool reporting tools, right? Because again, from a testing QA perspective, we love our reporting, right? We always want to know if you run this, how many pass, how many fail, right? What are the problems, okay? So we use ReportNG for that. All right. And then Perfecto Mobile, all right? Now, why we use Perfecto Mobile, all right? There's a few reasons. Now, I asked the question before, how many people use Appium, right? And there were a few of you guys that raised your hand and say, we have used Appium. Now, from my experience, there's a couple of things with Appium so Appium is built on top of Selenium framework, okay? So it's a really cool tool, don't get me wrong. The problem with Appium is this: if you're running Appium on emulator or simulator, it is extremely slow. All right? I have issue with performance. Now, that's only emulator. If it's real device, it's not that bad, right? The problem I have from a real device standpoint is you run one device plugged to a PC, all right? And if you want to run on iOS, you have to run it through a Mac. And you have to have the developer license and all that stuff. And here's the crazy thing about iOS with Appium. Every time there's a version upgrade, you know how right now it's 8.4.1, right? Is that .2 now? .1 or .2 now, right? Every time you have to download a different package to support that OS. And it's not easy to know which one go with which. So it's pretty confusing sometimes to get it all working correctly, right? That's one thing. The second thing was the client didn't want to buy a bunch of device in hand, because device in hand typically have a way of walking out the door if you don't secure it correctly, okay? And then the third reason is they have their team all over the world, okay? And think about it, right? If I have a team in, California, and, New Jersey, a team in Europe, and I have to go out there and duplicate the real device to all those groups, it's going to be really expensive, right? So because of all that reason, we want to use Perfecto Cloud because they offer real devices on the cloud, right? And so all this team can share it, right? Now, there's this concept, I don't know if you heard of this, called chasing the sun. Have you ever heard of that? Ever heard of that? It's basically, from a testing perspective, we're always chasing the sun, right? So what that means is you start out with Asia, then you go into East Coast time, okay? Then you go to, West Coast time, East Coast, right? Wait, actually, sorry. You start in Europe, not in Asia. You start in Europe, Asia, West Coast, East Coast. And what you do is the development and testing happen around the clock, okay? And for us to do that, we need a solution that is cloud-based, okay? And again, the main advantage is it's real device. All right. So from a testing perspective, and again, I used to be a developer, right? And a lot of developers say, yeah, I have emulator that I test in Xcode, right? I have emulator in the ADT that I can test, right? But reality is when you talk to the business, at the end of the day, they want, hey, how are you? I used to work with this guy. I know. He sat on the first one. I'm like, who's this guy? How you do? Anyway, we can talk later. All right. Yeah. All right. Sorry. It's just like, oh, yeah, I know him. All right. So we want this because it's real device, right? Again, if you ask the business, at the end of the day, they want you to do testing on real device, okay? And there's a lot of benefit in testing real device, right? Those emulator and simulator, a lot of the time, they only emulate the OS. They don't emulate the hardware. They don't emulate, the graphic card. They don't emulate all the other stuff, right? It's just the OS, and we want to make sure all those components works when we go run a test, all right? So what is the outcome? All right, we built about 300 automated tests. And again, tests, when we talk about tests, it's different, right? Some people call a single test, unit test as a test, right? And then some people call a business process test as a test, right? What we're talking about, this 300, is what we call business process flow, okay? It actually walked through the system. It's not testing a single functionality, okay? So because it's an insurance company, right? The application, what it does is it helps people, right, file a claim, right? So like, for example, you get into a car accident, okay, and you want to file a claim. This application steps you through on how to file a claim. So we have 300 of those because you would not believe, okay, how many different kind of accidents you can have. I didn't know this until I worked with this application, all right? You have things that causes by yourself, like you back into somebody else's car, right? You can have a tree falling in your car, okay? So there's a lot of different flow that you can go through from a claim perspective, all right? We take 20 of those test cases and turn them into smoke testing and pair that with Jenkins as far as trigger execution for post-build activity, all right? And then also, test cases are divided into 3 categories, high, medium, and low, right? Now, why did we do this, all right? Because of time, all right? If I have a quick change, I don't want to run my full regression suite. I only want to run all the high one first. So in Jenkins, we actually set up different jobs, okay? Like a high priority regression job, a medium, and a low. And then one that say all, and then one say smoke test. We did a bunch of different things. Make sense? Okay? And then the project team and QA team determine when the test needs to be run, all right? Now, here's the fun part, all right? Execution of a full regression suite takes around 2 days using Selenium Grid. Now, you say, wow, wait a minute. 2 days, that's a long time, right? Well, the reason it's a long time is think about the second subpoint there. Each test run on 8 desktop browser. So you have to take 8 times it by 300, right? And then also on 8 devices, all right? So even though we have 300 tests, reality, we're running thousands of instances. Make sense? Okay? That's the power of it, all right? So if you look at it, we run 4,800 instances, all right? If you were to do this manually, it will take 12 resources, 13 days to do it. So 2 days doesn't look too bad, right? When you compare to, 12 resources, 13 days. Make sense? Okay? Because we're running that many instances, all right? And the maintenance of the suite on average is less than 8 hours, right? So it's actually pretty good, all right? So any question on this? Yes, no, maybe? Yeah?
Are you referring to mobile web or mobile app during the automation?
Oh, good. Mobile web. For this project, it's mobile web. Mobile app, right? Mobile app is a little bit different because mobile app, typically your mobile app and your desktop app, so-called, it's not the same. And not even that. Within mobile, your iOS app and your Android app, a lot of the time is different. Even though the design try to be the same, the programming language is totally different, right? We have Objective-C versus mostly Java, right? And then not only that, the iOS feature is different between the two. So even though, if you have two devices, an iOS device and an Android device, and you download Bank of America app, right? Those two apps, even though it looks similar, it's totally different. It's totally different from a coding perspective. Make sense? Okay? So from a reusability, it's a lot harder to have one script to run across from an app perspective. Website, on the other hand, it's all DOM, right? And they're all similar HTML. That's why we can use one script across all those things. Make sense? Good question. Yeah. Good. Good. So in automation, right, we actually have 4 types of failure, right? First type of failure is what we want, or no, what we want to find, which is defects, right? If the script failed and we found a defect, that's awesome. Not always that's the case, all right? We can have test failure because of object change or element change, right? So the developer changed the definition of the element, right? So in Selenium, you know how you can say find by ID, right? Find by CSS, find by name, find by XPath. If you say find by, let's say XPath, right? Not good, not bad, right? Depending on your application, and the XPath change, you have to go and update that somewhere, right? Okay? So that's the second kind of failure. The third kind of failure is what we call data failure. The data that you use, so for example, if I'm working with a mortgage application, right, a web application, and I lock in my rate, usually you can lock in your rate 30, 60, or 90 days, right? So if I'm using the same ID and testing, after 90 days, guess what? That ID no longer valid for the rate that you were quoted in. You see what I'm saying? Now your script might fail because it's not having that attribute anymore. The fourth failure is what we call navigation changes, all right? So let's say you have to go from screen A to screen B to screen C, right? There was a change by the business to say go from A to C, then to B, right? Now your script is going to fail. Make sense? All right? So there's 4 types of failure. Maintenance, right, is the last 3. Data change, element change, or navigation change. Make sense? You got to update it. Remember, automation is just like development, right? Anytime there's a change, you got to make sure your scripts still run. Okay? Any questions? Yes, no, maybe? Yeah.
Why would you use, say, 96 browsers to get your test suite run in, say, 8 hours?
2 things. One is from a browser standpoint, right? From a browser standpoint, I can set up more VM, of course, from desktop standpoint, right? From a desktop standpoint, I can set up more VM, and that will lower some of it, okay? However, on mobile, right, because we're testing against real device, all right? Unless we want to buy more real device from Perfecto, okay, we only have a limited, because it's a, browser, I can emulate browser pretty easily, but real device, there's no emulation from real device. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's why, all right? So we want to get it lower too, but remember, there's there's a balancing act between the costs, right, and the time that we need.
So you were referring to emulating a browser. Why can't we just use the agent, just emulate all the browser? Or what's like make the difference between a real device and just emulate a browser?
Well, there is a difference. Again, from a testing perspective, real devices, so I can emulate iOS Safari, right? There's tools out there that let me emulate that. But what we found is from a business standpoint, right? If you go to the business and say, I did all this testing, but it's on an emulator, they don't like that too much, okay? Because they see real device. Again, part of it is we want the script to make sure the script run on a real device because there's other hardware within the devices that emulator doesn't account for. You understand? Graphic card, right? Yeah. Battery usage, right? Location base, right? All that stuff you cannot test from an emulator standpoint. Make sense? Okay. All right. So let me show you a quick. I got about 6 minutes here. I'm going to show you a quick demo. Let me bring up this right here. All right. So here is kind of again. I set up a really quick. A really quick test, but I'm actually going to run it through Jenkins. Let's see. Here's my Jenkins. So I'm going to do build now. And the cool thing about this is I'm going to build now. All right. And I'm going to go to console output. And the test is started, and I want to show you. So here's the test suite, and you can see how I'm actually opening up the S5, a IE 11 on desktop, Firefox 35, all that stuff. So it's running multi-threaded. And if you can see here, the Samsung is being opened, and then an iPhone. This is real device here on Perfecto Cloud. This is not. This is a real device I'm running against. Okay, and you can see how I am running not only on real device, but if I go back to my console, you can see that it has started all the threading for all the different desktop too. Okay. So going back here, you can see how it's going to the Boston Globe, and it's going to enter the zip code to try to subscribe. Okay. So I have one test, literally, that are executing across multiple devices and, okay, multiple browser. Okay. Now, if I have to bring up my grid server, then you can see, what is it running from the desktop side. But you can see how we're able to have one script, basically, okay, that run across mobile devices and desktop browser. Which, think about it from an automation standpoint, right? You don't have to have all the script maintenance-wise. Now you can be able to say the same script run here, run here, run here, run here. Does that make sense? Kind of, sort of? Okay. So this script takes a little bit long to run. Yeah?
Can you talk about Perfecto Mobile?
Sure. So Perfecto Mobile is a cloud-based solution, right? They have what we call a continuous quality lab. What it is basically they have, so at the Boston data center, right, they have real device that they hook up to Cradle, right? Basically Cradle, right? And you access those Cradle, all right, through a browser, all right? So I can open up a browser, go to the cloud, okay, and see that real device, right? And interact with that device from a web page. All right, so I can go out there and say, type this in here, drag this. It also lets you run automation, as you can see, okay? So now, again, instead of using Appium and hook up directly to my PC with a USB, I'm sending all the requests, okay, to the Perfecto Cloud. Does that make sense? How many people know about Source Lab here? Right? Similar concept, all right? So what we can do is we can do manual testing and automation and performance testing using the Perfecto Cloud, which have real devices, basically.
Is it built on top of Selenium WebDriver?
No, it integrates with Selenium WebDriver, okay? So, and Perfecto, I think they have a booth here. So if you need a lot more information on them, stop by their booth. But they are a cloud-based solution. Uh-huh.
How are you able to get yours so fast, though, with the streaming and stuff?
I don't know. That's a Perfecto cloud. and actually, it's funny because you said that, oh, we finished running the test, right? I'm actually tethered to my iPhone. Oh, and my iPhone tether just disconnected, all right? So Perfecto is actually really good at optimizing, right, the network speed so that, again, like you mentioned, right, like SourceLab, I work with SourceLab too, right? And depending where you're at, your company firewall and stuff like that, there might be some latency, right? Perfecto, they try to optimize the network quite a bit, and they have data center in many locations because the closer it is, the speed is better.
So do you also provide a capability to go to like restricted server? What I mean by that is some of our servers can have VPN.
Mm-hmm.
You can get VPN on your device.
Yes. So what they do is when you work with Perfecto, we have the same thing. The Perfecto network, right, have to talk to your network, and what they do is they open a direct tunnel, right, through either blue code or whitelisting or something like that of the IP, and you will get that information through. Yeah, good question. So you can see here. Oh, all right. I should have a failure. All right. And they are test failure. Yay! I actually want to see that, to be honest with you. Okay. And the reason is I actually created a failure. And so let me go back. And go back to project 16. Okay. And I'm going to look at my test.ng. All right. And you can see how we have one failure right here. Okay. And we skip one here. And that's exactly what I want to see. If you look at it, I was playing around with Allure. Have you guys ever used Allure? Yeah. It's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. Yeah. The only thing, there's a little bit deficiency with Allure and test.ng, though. It doesn't do the grouping correctly. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so that's kind of, and again, that's why we run Jenkins, right? So we can have that automatic triggers, the on-demand, and then also the schedule. Okay? Make sense? Any questions? Yeah.
For your pricing model, is it based on the number of devices, or is it structured differently?
I don't work for Perfecto. I use their tools. Sorry, but you can stop by their booth. Okay, they are pretty competitive with So on the cloud device world, right? You actually have a few major players. Perfecto is probably the top player. You have Device Anywhere. Have you ever heard of that? Right? You have Mobile Lab. You have a few other players, but Perfecto is kind of the leading company on as far as continuous quality lab, right? Another thing that with Perfecto is that they have integration with Selenium WebDriver, Remote WebDriver, and they just released support for Appium. Okay, so you can run your Appium script locally or through the cloud. Make sense? Good question. Any other questions? Oh my God! All right, let me see. I know I might be, and I think that's it. Demo, conclusion. All right, you know what the conclusion is. And I've been told I have to show the slides. Thank you to our sponsor. It's very critical that the camera captured this slide. Any other questions? We good? If you have questions, you want to pick my brain, I'm here. All right? Thank you, guys.